Sip Hub.
Welcome to our fourth Google Meet. This is our first Google Meet for our second module. Just raise your hand if you can hear me loud and clear. Ayon, so I can see people here raising their hands. That's a good sign. So, yun nga, we scheduled this Google Meet so that we can start presenting the topics that are included in your second module. So far, we are 48 in this classroom, so that's a very good number compared to our previous Google Meet. Yeah. So anyway, if you have some issues with our Google Meet, just raise your hand. I'm going to call your name before I allow you to speak para hindi tayo nagkakagulo. Yan. So anyway, let's start. We shall start with our presentation. So the second module is all about limits and continuity. Actually, 80% of the module is all about limits, and then the other 20% is all about continuity. And I don't know if this is your first time reading or learning limits, about limits. Sino sa atin ang medyo familiar or narinig doon yung word na limits? So syempre mathematics ang usapan natin. Meron ba? Yes, Jefferson Milan. Jefferson Milan. You're raising your hand. Are we familiar of the topic limits? Familiar ba tayo dito? Do we have a background as we were reading the module that I gave you? Okay, anyway, kung walang gusto magsalita, let's proceed with our topic. So, the first part of your module there is an intuitive approach. So, meaning I purposely included this one in your module because if you look at some other books, definition agad yung ipapakita sa inyo and then some examples. So in your module, I tried my best to explain to you intuitively what we mean by limits. And to start with, I'd like to use an analogy. This is an analogy I read in other books. Just to explain what we mean by limits in mathematics. So suppose you are watching in a football game or soccer. So normally yung area, no, yung field ay napakalaki niyan. So if you are too far from the field, you cannot really see what is really going on with the players and in the game. So what you do is you want to go nearer. So you want to occupy the front row seats so that you can observe what is really happening in the field. I mean in the game. So it's actually the same thing that we are doing with limits. When we are talking about limits, we are trying to observe the value of the function, not exactly at a particular point, but what is happening to the function around a particular value. So I'm going to share to you a GeoGebra file. I prepared some GeoGebra file. Can you see my GeoGebra file?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Actually, I am using another software today. So hindi na siya diretso na Google Meet. I am using OBS. I hope that this is better with the transition. So if you notice, diretso na. You can see me presenting other. I mean the percent button of Google. Anyway, I have here a function. The function is very complex. It is a rational function. So, kapag titignan natin dito, no, sa may baba, nandiyan yung pangalan ng function. f of x equal to negative x cubed plus 3x squared plus 2x minus 4 all over x minus 1. So what we see that this is actually a parabola. This is a parabola of Bentham Mars. um, I want us to focus our attention. I want us to focus our attention on what happens to the value of the function if x is exactly equal to 1. So, if you see the red dot at the upper left, nakikita ba natin?
Yes, sir.
Yan. The x value here is something that I can choose. Actually, this is called a slider. This is a slider in GeoGebra. This means that I can change the values of x kung ano man yung gusto kong maging value ng x na yan. So, if I want to change it, gawin ko siguro ng negative values, pwede kong slide lang to. Kapag gusto kong gawing positive dito, pwede kong gawin yun. Although naglagay na ako ng limit, so the limit is 5 and the minimum, the maximum is positive 5, the minimum is negative 5. So what it does, this GeoGebra here is, it gives us automatically the value of the function without computing it. Kasi makakagalan tayo kapag iisa-isa natin evaluate yung function at that particular x. So actually, ang nakikita natin ngayon, what is the value of f of x if x is equal to 2.4? And where can we see the value? Nandito no sa y sub 1. I included subscript because later on, I will be introducing another function and it would be confusing kapag y lang yan. So for the first function, we will call it y sub 1, the value of the function, the first function. At x equal to 2.4, the value of the function is 3.04. So, ganun lang yung ibig sabihin nito. Pagpalitan natin ang x value, gawin natin 2.9. Siyempre, mag-iiba din yung value ng function. 1.39. Let's have some examples in x values that are negative. So, that is negative 2.8. The value is, hindi na natin makita kasi nasa baba na. So, tignan natin. Scroll natin. Basta nasa baba yan. Negative 2.3 kasi dito yung x value. Hindi na natin makita yung part ng graph. Anyway, what was I saying a while back? Let us focus on a particular x value. So, gusto ko, ano yung sinasabi ko kanina? Let's focus on a particular value of x. So, I will identify what happens to the function at x equal to 1. So, hanapin ko lang ang x equal to 1. So, 0.5, 0.75, 0.8. Gawin natin sakto sa 1. So, barahan. This is 1.17, 1.06, 99. This is 1. What happens to the function? It vanishes. Bakit siya nag-vanish? If we look at the function, it is a rational function. The denominator is x minus 1. So if we substitute actually positive 1 in our function, we would be having an expression here whose denominator is 0. And again, division by 0 is undefined. That's why biglang nawala yung y sub 1 no, sa function na nandito nung sinet natin na ang ating x ay positive 1. However, in discussing limits, we are not actually interested of whether a function is undefined at a particular x value. So actually, sa chapter 1 lang natin yung diniscuss, pero dito, it's not exactly at x equal to 1, since alam na natin na undefined na, and we cannot do anything about that. Wala na tayong magagawa dyan, undefined lang yan kahit na nangyari. But what we can do is to observe what happens to the function if we observe it at x not exactly at 1, but at x values around it. What do I mean by around it? X values that are close to positive 1 but are not exactly equal to positive 1. And then we observe what happens to the y value or the value of the function. So since we are observing around 1, ano ba ang mga numbers na malapit sa 1? Pwedeng 2 siguro, malapit from the right. pag nandito, sa right na 1, may 2, may 3.05, di ba? 2.8. So pag ilapit pa natin, pwede. These are numbers that are actually close to positive 1 from a specific direction. Kasi nasa number line tayo, at x equal to 1, merong nasa right side ng 1 at merong nasa left side ng 1. So yun. So kailangan specify natin kung saan nanggagaling yung mga close numbers that are close to 1. So it's either coming from the right or coming from the left. So these are numbers that are close to positive 1 from the right of 1.96, 1.59, and let us observe what happens to the y value. So nandito. So at x equal to 1.86, the y value is 4.2604. Lapit pa natin yung konti. So 1.83. Observe lang natin ang nangyayari sa y value. Yan. Lapit na natin. X equal to 1.67. Ang y natin ay 4.5511. Yan. Lapit na natin. Lumalapit siya sa 1. 0.49, 1.48. Ang y value dyan ay 4.779. Lapit pa natin yung konti. Observe pa rin natin. So, ano ba ang nangyayari sa y value? 1.15 ay really close. 0.12, 0.09, 0.08, 1 and 1.08, 1.07, 1.06, 5, 05, 04, 03, ano na yung y value natin? 4.9991. Sa pa, 1.02, 4.9996. Sa pa, getting closer to 1, 4.9999. So, are there other numbers that are closer to 1 other than 1.01? Of course, yes. 1.001, 1.00001. Now, you tell me what is happening to the value of the number. Anyone from the group? Recitation. Ano ba ang nakita nyo na nangyayari sa y value nung nilalapit natin yung values from the right of 1? Yes, Mr. Milan, Jefferson.
Sir, the value of y is approaching to 5.
Approaching 5. Tanggalin na natin yung 2. The function is approaching positive 5 if x is approaching 1 from the right side of 1. Tama ba? So, from the right side pa yun na, hindi pa natin sa dilignan, hindi pa natin sa observe from the left side na. So, tama yun. Habang lumalapit ang x value natin from the right side of 1, lumalapit siya sa 1, yung y value niya ay lumalapit sa isang particular na number. That is 5. Yung 4.999 na yun, or the other values a while back, is getting close to the number 5. Now, let us observe also if x is coming from the let us observe also if x is coming from the left side of 1. So, ano ba yung mga numbers na nasa left side na 1? So, I can start here actually. 0.3 is a number that comes from the left side of positive 1. So, let us observe. So, ang tingnan natin yung y value. So, i-slide ko lang yung x value going to positive 1, approaching positive 1. So, 0.31, 0.35, gano'n. Yan. So, lumalapit lang tayo sa positive 1. Ano nga nangyayari sa y? Is it the same? Do we have the same observation with the other one when x are coming from the right of 1? Anyone?
Yes, po, sir.
Is it the same? Yes, it's the same.
Yes, sir.
So, how do we write that idea mathematically? Yung nakita natin, yung observation na yun, how do we write it mathematically. So we have a function, okay, that's f of x. Sulat lang natin dito, f of x, that's our function. If x is approaching positive 1 from the right, so this notation here means we are taking x values that are close to 1 from the right. So x is not equal to 1, but x are numbers that are very close to 1 from the right. What happens to the function? It is approaching a particular number. It's the number 5. Yung 5 na yon, ang tawag natin doon ay limit. Limit of f of x as x approaches 1 from the right side. Kasi yun yung unang observation natin. Ano pa yung pangalawang observation natin? In-observe din natin siya sa left side. And sinabi ninyo na it's the same observation actually. That is, the limit of the same function f of x as x approaches 1 from the left ay parehas na 5. Ang tawag natin dito ay limits. Mind you, the value the function f of x, wala siyang value at 1, di ba? Alam na natin, sinabi na natin kanina na nag-value yung function at f of 1 or the value of the function at x equal to 1. This is undefined. However, again, when we are speaking about limits, we do not care about the value of the function at exactly 1. Kasi ang tinitingnan lang natin ay around. So in-observe lang natin yung function around a particular value. Moreover, we call this one-sided limits because these are limits at a specific side of a number. Ngayon, ang gusto natin, a general limit. Anong ibig sabihin ng general limit? Hindi naka-specify kung coming from the right yan or coming from the left. General. It's coming from both sides. Because this is the situation, we can say actually that the limit of f of x as x approaches 1 is equal to 5. This is the general one, general limit. Ito yung tinatawag natin na one-sided. Now, let us observe. When can we have a general limit? When can we say that the limit of a function as x approaches a particular number, in this case 1, is equal to 5? Pag ba nag-exist ito, kung meron ito pero wala yan, pwede ba natin isulat ito? Or kung nag-exist yung isa pero wala yung isa, pwede ba natin isulat ito? Or, third case, nag-i-exist yung dalawa pero magkaiba sila ng number na ina-approach, because that is also possible. I'm going to show to you that the answer is no. The limit, this general limit, will not exist. Magbigay ako ng halimbawa, isa pang halimbawa, just to illustrate that further. So let's then consider another function. This time I'm going to name that function g of x. So that's it. This is our function, second function. Our function here is defined by x plus 1. It's still a rational function. It is x plus 1 in the numerator, and the denominator is x. Let's try to observe what happens to the function at x equal to 0. At x equal to, exacto siya no, sa 0. So let us slide this one. And see what happens if x equal to 0. I'm at x equal to 0.05. Babaan mo lang konti hanggang sa maging exacto na nasa 0. Ano nangyayari sa function? Pag bandagdagan natin konti, meron niyang values. Actually, hindi natin makita dito kasi nasa taas yung graph. Pero kung papunta yan ng 0, magiging undefined. Siguro ipakita ko na lang yung computation dito para ma-convince kayo. Masyado kasing marami kaya hinahain ko yun. Anyway, kapag slide ko to the positive part, ito yung function, no? So, meron tayong value. At x equal to 0.7, 2.4285, something ganyan. Meron siyang value. Pati din sa negative numbers, slide natin, for example, negative 2.65, the y value here is 0.57. It's the same. Ito or ito yung tinitignan natin. Yung nasa left side, this is called the input bar, and input menu, and then the brackets. Yung nakikita natin sa Cartesian labels. Actually, the same values here. Ang sinasabi ko kanina, kapag gawin natin sakto sa 0. So, sakto natin, anong mangyayari? Isusulat niya kasi sa input bar mismo. Sulat natin. Negative 0.1, negative 0.0. Ayun, 0. Anong sasabihin niya dito mismo sa left part? Sabihin niya talagang undefined. Tama, undefined naman. At x equal to 0, ang denominator natin ay magiging 0. So let us observe what happens to g of x if we observe the values not at exactly 0 but around it. So, subukan natin magsimula sa right side ng 0. 0.9, 0.8, 0.89, 0.88. Those numbers are numbers coming from the right of 0. And we are making it closer to 0. Ang tingnan ninyo ay yung y value. So right now, x is 0.84. Ang y value niya ay 2.19 and a lot of numbers. So maraming yan, pero basta 2.1904 and other numbers. Let's make it even closer. Tignan nyo nga kung merong nangyayari. 2, tapos let's make it even closer. Bilisan natin konti. Naging 4 na siya, no? Tapos naging 5 na rin siya. We are still at the right side of 1. Pumunta na sa sa taas, na dito na yung part ng graph. Hindi ko na sa gagalawin kasi magkahanga naman yan. But we get the idea. So, what happens? You please answer me. What happens to g of x, our second function, if we are making x value closer to 0? Anyone? Yes? Go ahead.
Sure, I think the function is getting closer to the x-axis, but it will never touch the x-axis.
Do you mean x-axis or y-axis?
I mean y-axis.
Yes. If x is getting closer to 0, that is at our x-axis, the function, ang basis natin ng value ng function, ang ibig sabihin ng value ng function ay sa y-axis, kaya nga y ang ating symbol. It is getting closer and closer to the y-axis. Anong ibig sabihin nun?
It is increasing.
The function g of x is approaching. Ituloy mo.
Hello po, sir.
Yes.
Sir, as x approaches 0 from the right, y is equal to positive infinity po.
That's right. So this is our first example. I-erase ko lang muna. Pero not all. Because our function now is not f of x but g of x. So we started from the right of 0. So this time x is approaching 0 from the right side. Anong sabi nyo? G of x is approaching positive infinity. Tataas lang at tataas lang yon. It will try to get closer and closer to the y-axis. That means that hindi yun matatapos. Wala siyang particular na number na ina-approach. Tataas lang at tataas yung g of x kapag ilapit natin yung x sa 0 from the right side of it. So, that's a good observation. If you read the entire manual or module, sabi natin, this is not a number, but this is accepted. You can put the equal sign kapag ito yung notations natin. However, these are not numbers. This only means that g of x is approaching positive infinity if x is approaching 0 from the right. Now, what happens if we observe the same from the left side of 0? Anong mangyayari kaya? Manggaling tayo dito, for example, and papunta tayong 0. Anong mangyayari? Anyone? So, I'm now moving. X is getting closer. Jefferson, yes?
Sir, the value of y is decreasing.
The value of y is decreasing or it is approaching ano? It is approaching this time. It is approaching. So x is approaching 0.
Sir,
It is approaching negative. So these are the results of our one-sided limits. Again, they are called one-sided limits because we are observing it from a specific side of that x value. Now, normally the question is not the one-sided limit. So unless specified in the question, ang tinatanong talaga sa atin ay yung general limit, meaning the limit of g of x from both sides. So 0, wala na siyang superscript na plus or minus because again, we want the general limit. Ano yung sagot dito? Kung ang right hand limit niya ay positive infinity, the negative or the left-handed limit is negative infinity, what should the answer for our general limit?
Sir, the limit does not exist.
Yes, the limit does not exist. If we write, what is the shortcut pala of that phrase? Ano yung shortcut nun? Anyway.
DNE, sir.
Okay, DNE. Should we put the equal sign dito? Ilalagay ba natin yung equal sign tas DNE?
No, sir.
Yes, because again, it is a number. Kung lagyan mo yan ng equal sign, tas sabihin mo DNE, at kapag binasa natin yan ng buo, the limit of g of x as x approaches 0 is equal to does not exist. So it doesn't make sense. So we remove the equal sign and that's it. We just read it as is. The limit of g of x as x approaches 0 does not exist. That is our second function. The third function. Let us proceed to the third function. The third function is named p of x. And the definition of the function, I hope we can see it. It is x squared. It is a rational function. Ang numerator niya ay x squared plus 2x. Tapos ang kanyang denominator ay square root of x cubed plus x squared. Kung hindi nyo makita sa Cartesian plane, nandito naman tayo. X squared plus 2x over square root of x cubed plus x squared. It's just the same. So, i-observe natin yung function this time around an x value na magiging undefined siya. Magiging undefined kasi ito at x equal to 0. So, let me show you that. If we specify x to be exactly 0, what happens to the function? Huwag nyo lang tingnan yung nasa taas, yung colored lang na dito yung concern natin sa kanya. So, x is at, malapit pa natin. Yes, negative 0.18, negative 0.15, malapit na tayo sa 0, negative, sobra. Ngayon, at exactly 0, x equal to 0, ang y or p of x ay magiging undefined. So, syempre nag-vanish yung y value kasi wala siyang value. So, ganun din sa 0, katulad ni g of x, i-observe natin siya around 0. So, observe natin. Unahin natin, kapag magsimula tayo sa right side ni 0, so magsimula ako sa 0.6 para mas malapit. 0.6, i-observe natin ang y value, saan ba siya papunta? Kapag ang x ay papuntang 0, ano mangyayari sa y? 2.0359, 2.0346, 2 point something, 2 point something. Lapit pa natin. 2 point something. 2 point something pa rin siya. Saan ba siya papunta? Anyone? Saan papunta ang y value?
Positive.
Papunta siya ng positive. So from the right ulit yun ha. Ano yung function? P of x.
P of x.
Galing siya sa right ni 0. Papunta siya ng positive 2. Yeah. Let's go back and observe what happens if we come from the left of 0. So, asaan? Left ng 0. Mag-start tayo dito para mas malapit na. Negative 0.35. Papunta tayong 0. So, what happens? Yan yung nangyayari. Negative 2.0, negative 2.029. Lapit pa natin. Yan. Malapit siya. Negative 0.19, negative 0.18 na tayo. Negative 0.17. Closer. It's getting closer and closer to 0 from the left. What happens to the function? Anong mangyayari sa function natin? Anyone? I need someone to speak.
The graph is
Negative 2, no? This time, the graph is approaching negative 2. Ang klaro dito sa graph, no? Hindi siya nag-a-approach sa positive 2. Nag-a-approach siya sa negative 2. That's why we write the limit of p of x. This is our third function now. If x is approaching 0 from the left, our answer is negative. Take note that the two one-sided limits exist. Hindi siya D and E. It exists. It's positive 2 and negative 2. But what should we write as the general limit? Ano yung isusulat natin na value dito? Anyone?
Sir.
Yes.
The limit of p of x does not exist simply from with 1.
Because
The limits from each side are not equal.
so, yon, isa ding condition yon. Kahit naman nag-exist yan, kung hindi sila parehas, hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na merong value yung general limit. Hindi naman natin pwedeng ilagay na plus minus 2 yan because the limit must be a single number. So, ang ilalagay pa rin natin dito ay D and E. It does not exist because the two-sided limits are not equal, although they exist. So, unless ito yung tinanong, specific na one-sided limit, that's the only time it has a cut. Pero kung hindi D and E pa rin yung general na limit. So, for a general limit to exist, ano yung condition natin? Ano yung ma-observe natin? Anyone? May ask someone to give a conclusion doon sa pinakita natin. Ano yung pagkakaiba dito at saka dito? Kailan nagkakaroon ng value yan? Lara Joy, yes? You may speak.
Sir, if the limit of both sides are the same,
Okay. That's the only time. Tuloy mo lang.
that's the only time that the general limit is complete.
Also, so that is correct. Kailangan nag-i-exist yung dalawa, the two one-sided limits. At the same time, kailangan equal sila para may value itong g(x). So maaari din na meron ito pero wala yan, meron ito pero wala yan, infinity ito, may value ito, hindi pa rin magkakaroon ng value yung general limit natin. We have a last example here, another function, to explain to you that one. Yung minsan, isang side lang ang may limit. Mag-observe tayo at x equal to 1 ulit. Punta tayo sa 1. Kapit pa natin. Going there. 96, 98, 99, and 1. Magiging undefined. Our fourth function here is h of x, by the way. Ang h of x ay square root of x minus 1. So, ito yung kanyang graph. Nakikita natin. So, undefined siya. But then again, we are not interested at what happens to the function at a specific value, but what happens to it around that value. So, pag galing tayo sa right ng 1, for example, 1.55, 1.something, 1.51, saan ba siya patungo yung y value natin? Anyone? Saan siya papunta? Sorry. Yan yung sinasabi ko, yung nag-uusapan natin. Ibigay natin, this is our function, h of x. It's our fourth function defined by square root of x minus 1. At exactly 1, at x equal to 1, the function is undefined. Hindi naman pala. It's still defined pala. Walang problema dyan. Pero pag punta natin sa right side or left side ni 1, so halimbawa ito, yan, negative 0.25, nasa left yan ng 1, nagiging undefined yung h of x. Yan, 0.4 is at the left of 1, undefined. So, pero kapag sa right ng 1, pag pumuntang 1, merong value yung function. Actually, the value of the function is approaching a particular number. What is that? Ano ba yun? Yung ina-approach ng function nito? Anyone?
0.
It is approaching, h of x is approaching 0 if x approaches 1. So, ipalitan natin yun. Ang function natin ay h of x. X is approaching 1 from the right. It's approaching a particular limit at yun ay 0. Pero nakita natin kanina, nakita ba natin? Nakita na lang natin. Pagka naman sa left side ng 1. So, ano yung mga numbers na nasa left pa nila? Yan, negative 0.1, yan, negative 0.6, 0.01. Ano ba yung y sub 4? Nandito sa left part. Hindi na natin makikita dyan. Nasa left part, it is always undefined. And why is that? Kasi, sa mga values na ito, for example, 0.24, pag substitute natin sa function, 0.24 minus 1 is negative. Square root of a negative number. Is that a real? Is that a real number? Kaya sasabihin niya talaga ang undefined. So what should be our answer dito sa isa pang one-sided limit? So h of x, limit of h of x, as x approaches 1 from the left side. Ano yung sagot natin? Yes, anyone? Richmond. Jose.
Does not exist.
It does not exist. Bakit?
Exist.
Kasi walang
Kasi po yung value po is not a real number.
because the value is
Not a real number.
not a real number. So kung walang value it does not exist. Tama ka. Now, we have a last question. So, ano yung sagot dito? Ito. What is the general limit? Limit of h of x as x approaches 1. H of x is a radical function. Di ba? Tama ba yan? Ganyan din ba yung sagot? Yes or no?
Yes po.
Ayan, so
Yes,
actually madali lang, no? Madali lang tignan kung may limit using the graph. Pero we can actually also investigate if there is a limit or one-sided lang ang nag-exist na limit by observing a table of values. Balik tayo sa first example. Nakalimutan ko, dapat sinabay natin ito kanina. So, balik tayo dito. Tapos, ngayon, gawa ako ng table of values. Do you know how to make a table of values? Ano ba yung x na ilalagay natin? How do we define numbers that are close to a particular number? Tayo na yung mag-isip doon, no? Walang pattern doon. Baka isipin nyo sa module, how did I know na ang ilalagay doon ay 0.09, 0.009. Basta close. Numbers that are close to that specific number. So, I want to create a table of value here using our first function as f of x. Undefine ito. Ayan, dito ba natin. So, let's create a table of value. This is undefined at 1, no? So, kung around 1, I may want to start the x values at 0.5 at saka 1.5. This means na ang i-table niya ay 0.50, 0.51, 0.52, 0.53, and so on, so forth. 0.1. Okay, ayan. Hindi pala 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. Tapos, from the right of 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So, we can actually observe and conclude the same using a table of values. So, these are the values that we identify as numbers that are close to 1 from the left of 1. See, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. From the right side of 1, we have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Tapos, if we observe the values of f of x, 4.75, 4.84, 4.91, it is actually increasing, but it will never exceed 5. Kasi 5 yung limit niya na pinakita din natin kanina is 4.99. That's true if we observe from the right side of 1. At exactly x equal to 1, naka-question mark kasi na ano ba yung function na natapos natin? Let's have the next one. This time g of x. This is g of x. Let's create a table of values. This is undefined at x equal to 0. So siguro nasa left yan ng 0 at right ng 0. Automatic na niyang ilagay kasi edit na lang natin. Dali lang ha. I'm gonna be organized first. Bring up niya kasi yung ibang function. G of x lang ang concern natin. Tapos ang x natin ay magsimula, since nasa left ng 0 ang kailangan natin, siguro mag-start din tayo ng negative 1. Tapos dito ay positive 1. Okay. So that 0x is equal to 0 if x equal to negative 1. Pababa yan, papunta ang 0. Ito ang pinakita din natin na is positive, it's going to infinity. Pupunta sa infinity. Kaya, ang kanyang general limit ay does not exist. So, napaka-erratic yung values ng function. Wala talaga siyang ina-approve. It is either very decreasing or increasing very fast. Let's remove this one. The next one is our third function. What is our third function? It is p of x. It is p of x. This is p of x. Let's create a table of values. Saan na ito alihan? At 0 pa rin. So, kanina. Okay. P of x. Ito na yun. So, define sa at 0. Kapit na rin. Tatlo lang. Ayun, kasi na-edit dito. Point 1. Well, anyway, you get the idea. So, ganito. So, at x equal to 0, wala siyang value kasi ang define siya doon. Pero, nag-exist yung one-sided limits. From the left of 0, nakikita natin na papunta lang sa negative 2. From the right, makikita din natin na papuntang positive 2. Pero sasabihin pa rin natin na yung general limit ng p of x as x approaches 0 is or is not or does not exist. So, ganun. Pati ganun din yung mangyayari, makikita natin kapag gawa natin ang table of values ang fourth function natin. Do you have a question?
Answer.
Sigurado kayo? None? Okay, anyway, the next one, the last part of this session is to compute algebraically. Ito yung medyo mahirap. Yung i-compute talaga natin yung limit without the graph or without the table of values. So those are the easier method of identifying whether the limit exists at kung ano mismo yung value niya makikita natin sa graph or sa table. But that would take us time, it would take us a lot of time because we of course have to draw the graph. Paano kung walang GeoGebra? Or kung kailangan natin gumawa ng table of values, medyo tedious yun. Ang gusto natin ay ma-solve yung limits algebraically. So, meaning, we do not use a graph nor table of values. This is the reason why I included also in your module the different properties of computing the limit. So, yun yung susunod na pag-uusapan dapat natin. How do we compute the limits algebraically? To help us, kailangan alam natin yung different na properties ng limits para i-apply na lang natin later on. So, I hope you have to do your modules. And I'm going to present it very fast. The properties are actually nasaan ba siya? Anong page? So the first one is a property about the limit of a constant. Constant function ang ibig sabihin niya. Function pa rin naman yon. Ang constant function, any function of the form y equal to c or f of x equal to c. Yung c, any constant. If you graph that one, that is a horizontal line. So, ang sinasabi ng property na yan, the limit of any constant function C yung function na yun, no? As x approaches any number, so kahit ano yan, mapa-negative yan, mapa-positive, mapa-zero, irrational, rational, basta real number yan, ang sagot natin ay yung constant mismo. Well, of course, kapag i-observe mo yung graph, yung y value lang niya ay isa. C. So, anong halimbawa nito? The limit of pi as x approaches e. Medyo irrational na kasi yung numbers na ginamit natin, but of course, the limit property still holds. This is a constant, it's a real number. This is also a constant, it's a real number. We do not actually care doon sa kung ano yung ina-approach ni x because the answer immediately is pi. Kung palitan natin ito ng iba pang constant, negative 1/2 for example, o ang sagot din natin ay negative 1/2. So very easy. Very easy yung number 1. The second limit property is a combination of the first one and another one. So this time, instead of having a very simple constant function, ang meron tayo ay product ng isa pang function, let's say f of x, tapos naka-multiply siya sa constant function na yun. So, function yan, constant function yan. Ito, of course, pwedeng constant pa rin. Pero, of course, ang constant times constant ay constant. So, yun mismo yung sagot. But what if this is another function? Ang gagawin lang natin dito ay i-factor out yung c. Ang evaluate lang natin ay yung limit ng f of x na yan as x approaches a. So, we do not have to multiply c to f of x, saka natin i-evaluate yung limit. It is easier, a lot easier, if we factor out it first, so that our main concern now is to evaluate the limit of this function. Yung function lang na f of x. So, halimbawa, limit of biglang 3x squared as x approaches positive 1. Parang ito yung f of x, no? Yung function, tapos 3 yung constant function. To evaluate this one, we do not have to prepare a graph or a table of values just like what we did a while back. We can use the first and second property. Although, alam ba natin yung x squared? Wala pa, no? Yung property, the property that would allow us evaluate x squared, limit of x squared is property number, ano ba? Number 8. Ayun, nasa number 8 pa siya. Pero anyway, applying the second property, pwede nating ihiwalay. Yun lang yung pwede nating gawin kapag first and second lang. So, the constant is 3, factor it out, so that your main concern is the limit of x squared as x approaches 1. So, remember this is approaching 1, meaning kailangan masatisfy yung requirements natin for a general limit. So, this is a general limit, not a one-sided. Yun. So, sige, sagutan na natin ito. How do we answer this one? We can use actually the 8th property. Sinasabi niyan, ang limit ng x raised to n, this is a single term monomial. Redundant yun. This is a single term polynomial or a monomial. As x approaches any number a, the answer here is just the same. It is x or a raised to n. So, yeah. So, parang sinubstitute natin yung a doon sa x raised to. That is actually what's happening here. Sinubstitute natin yung value ng x dito, kung ano yung ina-approach ni x dito sa expression na ito. Kaya kung i-substitute natin, a raised to n. We can apply this one to answer our earlier problem. So, this is 3 times, kapag i-substitute natin yan, our a here is 1, 1 squared, that is 1. The limit is 3. So, we now immediately know that the limit is 3 without looking at the graph or a table of values. Yes, do you have a concern? What are other properties here? Property 3, 4, 5. Those are properties about a sum, a product, or a quotient of two function. So, yun yung pinupunan natin ng limit. Let's provide some example. Anyway, since recorded ito, kung wala na kayong data, okay to leave, huwag nyo nang pilitin. Hanggang isa lang siguro, dalawa maiwan. I'm still going to %. Actually, kahit wala, para lang ma-record natin. So, it's okay kapag hindi kaya yung although right now, there are 39 students. Okay. Let us illustrate kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng properties 3, 4, and 5. So, we are to evaluate 3x squared plus 4x as x approaches 5. Do we have to graph 3x squared plus 4x and then get numbers from the right and left of 5 just to identify, to answer the limit? Or kung ano yung ina-approach ng function na yan? No, we can actually apply some of the properties here because our function is a sum. That's obviously a sum kasi plus naman yung operation in between them. We can apply property number 3. The property is telling us that we can actually separate a sum or yung bawat term, no? Yung bawat term ng ating function. And then follow the sign in between them. So actually, kung meron pang pangatlong term dyan, for example, minus 2, lagay natin, minus 2, o di tatlong separation yung gagawin natin. Limit of 3x squared as x approaches 5 plus limit of the second term 4x as x approaches 5 minus limit of 2 as x approaches 5. Well, we can answer this further by applying other properties that we discussed already. For example, this is a product of a constant and a function. We can factor it out. That is, we factor out 3. And then, sige, isulat lang natin yun. X squared as x approaches 5 plus, we do the same kasi may 4 doon. Limit of x as x approaches 5 minus limit of 2. Copy lang natin. And then, we can now answer using property 8, property 8, property 8, property 1. Limit of a constant. So, we have 3 times. I-substitute natin yung 5 sa x squared, meaning 5 squared. That is 25. Follow the sign. We have 4 times. Ganun din, i-substitute natin yung 5 sa x. So, we have 5 minus the limit of a constant is just the constant itself. Thrice 25, that is 75 plus 20 minus 75, 85, 95 minus 2 is 90. Baka mali yung arithmetic ko, but the idea is just the same. Yeah. Ganun din kapag product yan, product yung function natin or a quotient. We will apply the product property, the quotient property all at once para mas mabilis. So let me erase this one unless you have a question. Questions? May tanong?
None, sir.
Okay. Palitan ko lang ito para mapakita lang natin. Although, I do believe na it's the same. Matutundan nyo yung nasa module ninyo. I provided a lot of examples yata dyan. If that's enough for you. Sige, x plus 1 lang at saka x squared minus 1 as x approaches 3 siguro. What is the main operation of our function? Ito yung function natin, no? Ito. X plus 1 over x squared minus 1. What is the main operation? Yun muna. Anyone?
It's division, sir.
Yeah, it's a division. So, ang una nating pwedeng gamitin na property ay yung property about division. That is actually property number 5. So, ano yung ibig sabihin ng property na yan? pwede nating ihiwalay as two separate limits yung numerator at saka denominator. So, i-copy natin yan, ilagay natin sa numerator, ilagay din natin siya sa denominator. So, bali, we have limit of the numerator. By the way, huwag tayong tamarin. Ilagay natin at ilagay yung ito. Notations natin ito. Over the same denominator, x squared minus 1, as x approaches. Wala pa palang product, no? Hindi ako naglagay ng product. Maglagay tayo. Halimbawa, x dito. Ang numerator natin ay x times x plus 1. Okay. So, for the numerator, we can apply the product and a sum. Gawin natin yun. So, ang unang factor kasi ay x. Yung pangalawa ay x plus 1. Pwede natin ihiwalay yun using property number 4. So, limit as x approaches 3. Ganun din dito, limit as x approaches 3. And since these are product, pwede natin siyang gawin na product din ng dalawang. I-copy x squared minus 1. And then, dito, pwede natin i-apply yung sum ulit. Sum. So, actually, digitan ko konti. Nagiging limit of x as x approaches 3 plus limit of 1 as x approaches 3 over, ganun din dito, limit of x squared as x approaches 3 minus limit of 1 as x approaches 3. We can now simplify. Substitute natin si 3 dito. Anong property yun? 7 or 8? 8. So, 3 ang sagot. Sundan natin yung operation. Half 3 ulit. Limit of x. 3 ulit. Plus, this is a constant. 1 ito. So, 1 lang yan. Dito, x squared. So, we substitute 3 to x squared. That's 9 minus, parehas na constant yan. So, we simplify this one as, diretso na wala ng space. This is 4 times 3, 12 over 9 minus 1 ay 8. This can be still simplified as by 4, no? So, 3 over 8. The answer is 3 half. The limit is 3 half. The other properties here, can I say it's self-explanatory? Kaya ba? Pag-power. Tapos, a single term polynomial. Actually, we can, it's the same, no? 7 at saka 8. That is the same. Nagkataon lang na bakit x equal to 8? Dapat x lang yan. Hindi, tama. X na lang. The answer is 8. Those are the different properties. Let's go back, or let's move further with the strategies, no? That is because this is the long method. This is the long method of computing or evaluating the limit. Nilagay ko dyan yung mga strategies para hindi natin kailangan gawin ito. Like, this is very long. This is applying the properties. There are suggestions here. These are suggestions that we will apply. So, halimbawa, no, I am on page 10. Anong sabi niya sa unang strategy? Of course, use the properties of limits whenever applicable. Yes. Ano yung second? Let's proceed to the second one. May I ask someone to read this one? There. May I ask someone to read the second strategy?
For polynomial functions, the limits also contains the this means we simply implement the solution.
Yan. Pag polynomial function. Pag polynomial, alam natin dapat ang polynomial. That is discussed in chapter 1. Halimbawa ng polynomial function, we have px raised to 5 plus x raised to 4 minus 3x squared plus 2x minus 7. Tapos evaluate natin yung limit ng function na ito at x equal to positive 1. Do we need to apply the properties? Because we can apply the properties. Walang question doon, no? Una, ihiwalay natin because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms. Ihiwalay natin yan as 5 different limits. Tapos gamitin natin ulit, i-factor out natin yung mga constants like 3, 3, 2. Tapos gamitin natin yung property 1 to evaluate the last limit, which will be a limit of a constant. Pero according to that strategy, pag polynomial kasi, ang graph niya, the graph of a polynomial function is always a continuous line. At walang break dyan, walang mangyayaring break dyan. There is nothing that is funny there or crazy about polynomial function. Because of that, the value is actually the value of the function mismo. Sabi natin kanina, we mentioned a while back that we do not care about the value of the function at x equal to 1 because when we are studying limits, ang tinitignan natin actually is the value of the function if x is around 1 from the left and from the right. But special to polynomial functions, nagkataon na yung ina-approach ng value ng function na ito, if we choose x close to 1, ay siya mismo value ng function mismo sa 1. So, we can actually use substitution. So, the value of this limit is just the value of the function at x equal to 1. Pero kailangang magbigay ako ng warning na hindi lahat ng pagkakataon ay pwede natin i-substitute. Actually, we specified na for polynomial functions. Actually, not only, no, pero merong iba. So, this is a general strategy. Ang una mong gagawin to evaluate a limit is to substitute that value of a. Pag sinubstitute mo dyan at hindi undefined or hindi indeterminate, meron talaga siyang value. Normally, most probably, yun yung sagot. So that is actually applicable for our polynomial function. So anong gagawin natin dito? Hindi ko siya gagawin hindi ko siya lalagyan ng equal sign, tapos sasabihin kong substitution. I can do that in a separate space. Parang ang logic natin because f of 1 is equal to, so siguro this is, the name of the function is f of x kasi. We have 3, so we are substituting 1 to the function plus 1 raised to 4 minus 3, 1 squared plus 2 times 1 minus 7. Ano ba to? 1 lang naman yan, kaya 1 din lang ito ang raised to 5. 3, ganoon din dito, 1, 3, 2, 7. 3 minus 3, that's 0. 1 plus 2, 3 minus 4, that is negative 4. The value of the function at x equal to 1 is negative 4. Because this is a polynomial, also the limit is equal to negative 4. So, yeah. Do you have a question? Do we have a question? Yes, Mr. Andaya.
Sir, is solving one-sided limits also the same as evaluating general limit?
One-sided limits? Kapag ang tanong, ganyan, that means a one-sided limit. If we can see a superscript dito, that is a one-sided limit. That is either a right-hand side limit or a left-hand side limit. Dito. So, kung nalagay dyan. Pero, originally, wala, no? Kaya, general limit ito. But what is general limit yung nasolve natin na ito? Ibig sabihin, ang left side limit niya at saka right side limit niya ay negative 4 pa din. Yun ba yung question? Or is that your question? Or I did not understand your question.
Okay, sir. Understood.
Let me give you another one. Rational, ito yung problema natin sa rational. Suppose we have a function g of x equal to x squared minus 1 or 2, iba naman, for 3, x minus, this is the function, at ang gusto nating evaluate, the question here is the limit of g of x as x approaches 2, halimbawa. 2. May problema ba tayo sa g of x as x approaches 2? So sabi natin kanina, let us try to substitute. The first strategy that we can use when we are evaluating a limit is substitution. So, investigation lang yan. Hindi tayo sigurado, no? Let us just investigate what happens to g of x at x equal to 2. So, g of 2 equal to 2 squared minus 9. I'm following the function. Sinubstitute lang natin ang 2 sa x. 2 minus, so we have 4 minus 9 over 2 minus 3 is negative 1. 4 minus 9 is negative 5 over negative 1. That is actually positive 5. It exists. Actually, the limit, the answer here is indeed positive 5. Because we are evaluating it at x equal to 2. Nagkataon no na nag-exist din siya if we observe kung anong nangyayari sa g of x kapag mamili tayo ng values na close to 2. So halimbawa, 1.99. Pag i-substitute natin ang 1.99 dito, it would be a number that is very close to 5. Now, palitan natin, x is not approaching 2, but x is approaching 3. 3 na ngayon, hindi na 2. Subukan natin yung substitution ulit. Hindi na siya 2, 3. So this is 3. Saan pa? This is 3. Kaya 3 squared ay 9. 9 minus 9 yan. Tapos ang denominator ay 3 minus 3. We have 0 over 0. Yan na naman tayo. This is in indeterminate form. This is our first indeterminate form. Indeterminate yan. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Indeterminate din ba yung limit na ito? Yung answer nito, it's not. The reason why it's called indeterminate, it's because it's not definite. Meron possible yan na meron yang limit. Although possible din na wala. Ulitin natin, kapag sinubstitute natin yung constant natin, yung 3 na yan, sa function at ang result ay undefined or indeterminate, there are two possible scenarios there. Either the limit exists or the limit does not exist. So it doesn't really help us kapag indeterminate. We need to use another strategy. That strategy is what we call simplification. Very simple. It's indeterminate. Maybe, just maybe, we can simplify first the function before we again use substitution para hindi na siya indeterminate. And looking at our function, we can indeed simplify this one. Our numerator is a difference of 2 squares. So we can factor this one as simply x plus 3 and x minus 3. Hindi ko na i-discuss kung paanong ganyan. It's up to you to have a review kung paano mag-factor. So x minus 3 yung denominator natin. We can cancel that out. This is simplified as x plus. Okay, so bali ito yung function talaga natin. Now, let us do again substitution. This time, dito natin, ito yung gagamitin natin sa substitution. That's x plus 3. Kaya magiging 3 plus 3 lang yan. The answer is 9. Nag-e-exist yung value ng function if it is simplified as x plus 3. This is also the limit. Actually, it is 9. So you see, the limit exists even if upon substitution of 3 to the original function, indeterminate siya. Pero nung sinimplify natin, tapos sinubstitute natin ulit, merong sagot. It's positive 9. Paano kung hindi natin masimplify ito? O di, sabi ko nga kanina, kapag indeterminate yan, pwedeng wala siyang limit, that's the exist, or meron siyang limit. And that's the time na i-refer natin sa graph. Yung graph na talaga yung makakapagsabi sa atin kung hindi talaga or wala siyang limit. If the limit does not exist. Okay, those are our strategies. Ano pa yung strategies na natin? So, ang importante dito, pag indeterminate, pag nag-substitute tayo at indeterminate, we do not stop there. Hindi natin sasabihin na yun yung kanyang limit. Normally, meron nga natin. Meron. Hindi naman meron at meron. Sabi ko, majority ng problems na nandito ay meron. Pero kapag direct substitution doon sa original na function, it will appear that it is indeterminate or undefined. To end, let us answer practice exercise 1. This is how we conclude the night, the session. How many of us are still here? There are 20 of us. Sagutin na natin ito, yung problems na nandito. So the first one is actually very easy. What is the first one? Are you still with me? The first problem is a limit of x cubed minus 2x squared plus 5x minus 6. X is approaching, that's 2. So it's a general limit. I'm not asking a left-sided or a right-sided limit, but a general one. This is a polynomial. So again, the strategy that we can apply is substitution. It is a polynomial, so sigurado tayo na if we use substitution, the answer there is the value of the limit. So siguro, isolve muna natin kung ano ang 2 cubed minus 2. So we are following this function, substituting 2 plus 5 times 2 minus 6. I-simplify lang natin ito. 8 minus, this is 4 times 2, that is again 8 plus 10 minus 6. 0, 10 minus 6 is 4. So the answer here is positive 4. Number 2, the limit of x minus 6. X cubed minus 216 as x approaches 6. Dahil meron na tayong discussion, hindi na natin kailangang isulat lahat-lahat. We can actually predict kung upon substitution of 6 to this expression ay magkakaroon tayo ng indeterminate form. So nakafocus naman tayo sa actually sa denominator, no? Well, obviously sa numerator, if we substitute 6, we have 6 minus 6. It will give us 0. How about the denominator? Substitution of 6 to the expression x cubed minus 216. The cube of 6 is 216 din kasi. So 216 minus 216 is 0. We have 0 over 0, which is indeterminate if we substitute 6 directly to the original function. Sabi natin, if that happens, we do not just stop there because it is possible that the limit is still existent. How should we proceed? Dapat i-simplify natin kung pwede. So kung sinisimplify natin yung expression na nandito, yung function na nandito, kailangan i-copy lang natin dito. Because we are not yet evaluating the limit, we are just simplifying. So wala dapat mag-iiba dito. So we have limit, just copy as is, x is approaching 6. Ano ba ang pwede nating ma-factor dito? So normally kapag simplification yan, ang una nating ginagawa ay factor. So, the numerator is just as simple as that, x minus 6. Pero yung denominator natin, this is a difference of 2 cubes. And how do we factor a cube, a difference of 2 cubes? Review. A cube minus b cube, these are the numbers that are perfect cubes. Ang factor niya ay yung cube root ng dalawa, follow the sign. Tapos yung pangalawa niyang factor ay galing dun sa unang factor. We square it first, negate the sign, multiply the two terms a and b, walang 2 pala doon, so it's just ab, plus the square of the second term, b squared. So yun yung i-follow natin na factoring. So, anong gagawin natin? Cube root of x cubed and 216, that is x, follow the sign, ang cube root ni 216 ay 6. Tapos yung pangalawang factor dito ay manggagaling dito. You square the first, negate the sign. I am referring to the sign. You negate it, negate natin yan. And then product, so 6x plus 36, that's the square of 6. Ganun factor ng difference of 2. Pag sum yan, pwede pa rin. Magiging sum lang dito, magiging minus that. So, okay. Anyway, can we simplify our function if we do that? Yes, because we have a common factor there. Actually, what's left is anong maiiwan sa numerator? Edi 1 lang kasi nawala na yung x minus 6. X is approaching 6. We have x squared plus 6x plus 36. Now, we try to apply substitution. I-substitute na natin ngayon ang 6 dito. So, we have 1 over 6 squared plus 6 times 6 plus 36. We have 1 over 36 plus 36 o tatlong 36. Ano ba ang tatlong 36? 36 plus 30. So that is 6.
108.
Yeah, 108. Meron na siyang value. Upon substitution, meron na siyang value. Yun na rin yung sasabihin natin na value ng, so that is 108. Okay, question before I erase this one. Let's move on to the third problem. That is the limit. Sabihin nyo lang kung hindi nyo makita ang board. 3x minus 6. 3x. Tama ba? As x approaches 2 from the right side. Naka-specify dito na one-sided, no? Yung hinahanap natin. Actually, walang maiiba sa strategy natin. Ang una nating gagawin ay substitution pa rin. If the answer upon substitution is existing, actually that is the value. So, ang dali-dali, no? Ano bang sagot? 3 times 2 minus 6. 6 minus 6 equal to 0. That is the limit. 0. Anong strategy na ginamit natin? Substitution. The fourth problem is the same, except that it's not the same. It's similar, almost the same, except that it is asking us a general limit. So, left and right. So, syempre, ganun din siya. 6 minus 6 equal to 0. Well, that would make sense kasi kung 0 yung kanyang general limit, both of the two-sided limits or both of the one-sided limits, kailangan 0 din. Kasi kung hindi 0 yung nakuha natin dito, tapos 0 dito, mababiolate na maninigate niya lahat yung sinabi natin kanina. And of course, the final question, hindi pa pala. Meron pa number 5, limit of log x 1 over x. X is approaching positive. Do we have a problem if we use substitution? Try natin. So, logarithm of x. So, palitan natin ng 2 plus 1 over. What is logarithm of 2? Will you please use your calculator to evaluate? Is it an exact number?
No, sir. No, sir.
Ano yung sagot?
0.3000.
So, mahaba. Anyway, is this a constant? Is this already a constant? Is this a value? Yes, di ba? So, actually, pwede na natin ilagay. Kasi value na yan. Walang problema dyan. So, we have logarithm of 2 plus 1 half. ay sa decimal yung ilagay natin, that would be just an approximation. Number 6, it involves trigonometric functions. 3 sine 2x plus cosine squared x as x approaches pi. O, di substitution ulit. 3 sine 2 pi, that's 2x. So if we substitute pi, 2 pi plus cosine squared pi. Palitan natin ang x ng pi. Ano ba ang sine ni 2 pi? Anyone? Ang 2 pi, it's the same as 360 degrees. So in a circle, bumalik ka doon sa point na nasa x-axis ka. Ano yung y value doon? Sine is the y value, di ba? If you do not know the answer, just press your calculator. It will give you the answer.
It's 0.
0. So 3 times
0.38.
Are you sure? Make sure that you have to make sure that your calculator is in radian mode kapag ang ilagay mo ay 2 pi. Pero kapag ang ilagay mo ay 360, dapat ang calculator mo ay nasa degree mode. 2 pi ang nilagay mo pero feeling ko naka degree mode ka kaya hindi 0. So then anyway, the answer is 0 plus, anong ibig sabihin ba ng cosine squared pi? This is the same as cosine pi. Dito na lang. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng cosine squared pi? Parehas niyan ang cosine pi, tas ang sagot nun, tsaka mo siya square. That is cosine squared pi. Pag trigonometric kasi yung expression, yung exponent niya, sinusulat natin just after the trigonometric notation. What is cosine pi? Yung pi, that is a semi-circle. So, matatapos ang pi na angle sa negative x-axis. Kung nasa negative x-axis ka, ano yung cosine doon? Kasi ang cosine ay x value. If you are in a unit circle, ano yung sagot doon? It is
1, sir.
1 ba? Negative x-axis tayo.
Negative 1.
Negative 1. Negative 1. And then may square pa tayo dyan. O, simplify lang natin. 0 yung una. Square of negative 1 ay 1. Diba? May sagot. The limit is positive 1. So, that's where we end our session today. Medyo napatagal tayo. 2-hour session. Sakto lang. This is the end of our 4th Google Meet. So I hope you learned something today. In a scale of 1 to 10, how is your understanding